Welcome to Practice Dirty, a podcast that helps women of color explore their inner well-being. I'm your host, Michaela Rose. I'm a mindfulness facilitator, podcaster, writer, and cowgirl. I've come to learn that there's an inward journey that begins at 40. This process of discovery isn't linear, and the work we have to do can be downright dirty. I'm here to help you along the way. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this latest episode of Practice Dirty with me, your host, Michaela Rose. Today, I have someone really special with us. She is a transformational life coach. In fact, she was my life coach, and we have a whole history that will probably come out during this episode, but I'm going to let her self-introduce and tell you about who she is and a little bit about her journey. So, Kecia, take it away.
Thanks, Kayla. First of all, thank you for having me. And I'm super excited to be here. And it's just an honor to do this with you. So I am a transformational life coach. And that sounds really fancy. And really, it's helping people in the crossroad moments in their life. It's in the I can't figure out what to do next of their lives. It's when the shit's not working in their lives.
Yeah.
And it is the life coach piece of it is important because it is your entire life. It isn't just your business. It isn't just your relationships. It isn't just, it really, nothing is left off the table.
Yeah.
If it's relevant, it comes in. So that's one piece of it. I specialize in imposter syndrome. Mainly because so many of us suffer from it in one form or another. And really at the basis of that is chronic self-doubt and self-sabotage.
Yeah.
But the main thing that I do with all of my clients, no matter what, and in all areas that I do work in is really teach you how to have not only a really healthy relationship with yourself, but to prioritize that. Because if you're not right with you, you're not right with anyone.
Amazing. So, Kecia, your journey to becoming a transformational coach hasn't been linear, like a lot of the women's lives that are listening to this podcast. So can you just kind of give them a top level overview of like where you started to where you are now?
So, yes, I've been a helper bee since I was born. So my favorite place to be in relationship with anybody is in your inner world. It's the only place that matters to me is in your thoughts, in your feelings, in what makes you you. But I did that through a lot of years of retail and customer facing corporate work, because that's where the people were. And all I wanted to do was hang with people in their inner worlds.
Yeah.
Coaching has taken a totally different approach to it for me. And when I began coaching, I thought this is going to be awesome. I'm going to have like tons of one-on-one people and it's going to be great. And that evolved as I grew in my own coaching and healed and found what I like. I mean, really, I imagine that it will continue to evolve as I continue to develop my skills more and more and more. So, yeah.
Kecia, when it comes to mindset, what are some of the biggest hurdles that you see women facing?
Oh my gosh. So to simplify it, it's their thinking. It's their stinking thinking.
Your stinking thinking. I love it.
Thinking. It's the problem is between our ears. Now, that isn't their fault. That is years and years of decades and decades and generations on generations of cultural indoctrination, conditioning from gender roles, from our parents, from ancestors. Like there's a lot of what goes into the thinking, the stinking thinking. But yeah, that's the biggest obstacle. That's why mindset is so important, is because if you don't know what's going on in there, it's running the show without you knowing.
So let's dig a little bit more into that. So when you're saying it's stinking thinking, define that. Is it just more?
So some people call it your inner critic.
Okay.
If that's true. There are some modes of therapy that call it, the internal family system, which is you get hurt early on in life and it creates another personality. And this is not that you have multiple personality disorder, but we all have multiple personalities. We have hundreds of personalities because every time we get hurt, another one comes in. If we can't process that hurt, another one comes in to help us mask the hurt, to protect us from the hurt, right?
Yeah.
So a disorder of that is when those parts then become separate and they aren't connected. They don't know about each other. That's when it becomes a mental disorder. But all of us have, so that's the internal family system. Gremlins, I'm almost 20 years sober, and in AA, they call it the itty bitty shitty committee. It's just all the voices in your head that just kind of nag at you, push you, call you names, tell you you're not doing enough, you're not good enough. That's the stinking thinking.
And so how does mindset play into imposter syndrome? First of all, in case someone doesn't know, can you define it? Can you tell people what imposter syndrome is, and then how your mindset plays into that?
Yeah. So imposter syndrome is the inability to accurately assess your capabilities and your competencies as it relates to your life, your business, your work. You don't have an objective view of yourself. And for the short version of that is competency dysmorphia. You can't see yourself clearly. And you see yourself as somebody who doesn't belong at the table in one form or another. You got the job through because you knew someone, or here's the one that I used all the time was like, I just have the job because they like me. I'm likable. But even in that, disowning the fact that likability is a competency. Like getting along well with others, that's immeasurable for teamwork and being in environments where you have teams. So just even so you diminish anything that could be a success, you diminish it, you either make it small or you give it away to something else or someone else. The stars aligned. Yeah, you led the team for the successful project, but you give all of the credit to everyone else around you. And that looks like good management to a lot of people because you're not taking the credit, you're like promoting your team. Yep. And if you're hiding in that and you accept none of the credit, that's imposter syndrome.
Okay. And for women that are, I'm going to just use the word suffering from imposter syndrome, what does that do to you mentally and also on some level spiritually?
Well, the cost is really, really high in all areas. So you don't speak your mind, because even if you have the right answer, you'll like whisper it to your friend at work. And they'll be like, yeah, that's totally it. Yeah, let's bring that up in the meeting. But you get to the meeting and you keep it quiet, and then somebody else may say it and you get passed over. So you continually diminish who you are, and while that's happening, that you're making yourself small, it's reinforcing that you don't belong. It's reinforcing the doubt, right? Because if you really were capable, you would be able to say it. Because that's the stinking thinking. Because not only were you afraid to say it because nobody wants to hear what you have to say, and what if I'm wrong? And what if they find out that I'm wrong and somebody points out that I'm wrong? Maybe I should just think about that longer. And so then you don't say something, or you don't ask for the promotion. You don't ask because you might get rejected. So that reinforces it so you don't say it, then you reinforce it. And it's just this self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like the cat, it's like the snake eating its tail, right? Like it doesn't fix itself. The weight and the hole and the hiding just gets bigger, bigger, bigger.
So how do women start to overcome imposter syndrome?
Unfortunately, there is no way out without a mentor. There really isn't. You have to use somebody. And you cannot use your best friend, unfortunately, because your best friend is supposed to say nice things to you.
Okay.
Which means that anything they say to you, no matter how smart, no matter how capable, no matter how absolutely 100% spot on, you're not going to believe it because they have to say it. Yeah. So because of the nature of it, and there's so much hiding there, you have to have somebody who accurately reflects back to you what's actually happening for you. Like when you say something and they reflect it back and you're like, oh, okay, well, that's mine. And yes, I'm paying you, but I'm not paying you to say nice things about me. I'm paying you to fix this. Right. So it does require some level of therapy, mentorship, coaching. It takes an outside source to partner with.
And tell me a little bit about that. Like, let's go a little bit deeper into having someone there to kind of reflect back your thinking. So you're saying having a person almost serve as a mirror. So explain that a little bit more.
So, well, first of all, we believe the thinking that's happening in our head, right?
Yep. Oh,
We
yeah.
believe it. So if there's somebody across from you, if you say, you know what, I only got this job because somebody knew me. I knew somebody that was already in the company. They referred me and recommended me. That's the only reason I have the job. I wouldn't have gotten it by myself. And the person across from you, the mentor, says, how did the person next to you get their job? Did they know somebody too?
Yeah.
Isn't that called networking? Isn't that like actually isn't that part of how you get a job, is to tap all the people you know to see, hey, what's out there? Who we got? How does that, right? So it challenges that thought. Like, is that true? And if it's true, okay, so you believe it's true. Do I believe that's true? Does your best friend believe that that's true? And when you start to challenge, because there's no challenge while you're in your head, nobody's in there challenging those thoughts. They just run around in circles, making havoc, thinking, like, just continuing to create a stink. But when somebody challenges the thought, like, is that true? I mean, and if you had to say that to someone else, if your own employee said that to you, the only reason I got this job was because so-and-so knew me. And you would be like, well, yeah, that's how you got in front of me. That's not how you got the job.
Right.
You got the job, right? Like, it's challenging the thinking, and you can't do it by yourself.
Okay. And one of the tools that I have had you use on me several times is that I know is in your awesome toolbox is Brainspotting. Let's talk more about it, because for me, I think that's been one of the most powerful things that I've ever experienced. I mean, just to keep going for a second, guys, like, I had a horseback riding accident over 10 years ago. And, I've been working for years to get over it. And there would just be the minute I put my foot in the stirrup and get on the back of one of my horses, I would start to have an anxiety episode. And I tried, and it got incrementally better. But after, hypnotherapy, mantras, visualization, everything, I still had this baseline level of anxiety every time I got on. And so for my birthday this last year, Kecia brain spotted it. And within 72 hours, like, it dissolved. The fear and anxiety was gone. And I literally went out, got on my horse Mia, and tacked her up, walked in a couple circles, and went for a ride in a big old field like it was nothing. And so, and we've done some other brain spotting around some kind of like inner child work, stuff like that. But let's talk about brain spotting, what it is, and just how come it is such a powerful tool. I mean, out of all the things, this is the thing that worked for me.
A magic pill, because I have always,
right. It's like, it is the thing.
Here's the real interesting thing. Anybody who's worth their salt in therapy or in coaching or whatever is always in the trenches of their own work, right? I'm not going to teach you something that I haven't been through myself. I'm not going to, so there's a reason that I specialize in imposter syndrome, lifetime of chronic doubt and self-sabotage. Yeah. And I'm always looking for, like, okay, there's the long way and there's the fast way. And how do I've been so many long ways. How is there's got to be a faster way. There's got to be a shortened way. And brain spotting is about as close to a magic pill as I can find. Okay. And the reason, so what it is it, whatever the theme is, whatever the issue is that you can't get over for you, the anxiety with the being on the horse, the abject fear that just grips your body, and no amount of logical thinking, I'm safe, this is fine, I'm not going to fall off again, I have all the safety precautions, no amount of rational stuff fix it, like, can touch it, because you get on and your body takes over and it clenches down and you go into fear, right? So whether it's you get caught in rage, whether you get caught in some form of the fight, flight, stress, fight, flight, freeze, stress response. That is because that's a trauma. And what happens in a trauma is that it doesn't matter if it's big T, little t, we all have trauma in variations of forms. And some things that seem so minuscule, like you should get over that, are the things that trip us up the most, because we think we should get over it. There shouldn't be an issue. But when we first experienced it, we had no capacity and ability to process it. So it gets stuck in your subconscious. And I liken it to a filing cabinet, right? Like
Yep.
your subconscious is recording everything all the time, from the atmosphere, the temperature, the moisture in the air, every sound, every physical sensation. That's everything. And it sees everything 360. It can
Yep.
capture everything, right? So it's recording and filing and recording and filing. It has no thoughts. It doesn't think. It just runs the program. It just records and it just spits things out. So if you have a trauma that didn't get processed, it can't file it. So it's messy. It can't close it up. It's like, can't close a drawer. So it keeps giving it back to you.
Right.
This isn't done. This isn't done. This isn't done. And
Yep.
so until you resolve it, heal it, it's going to keep showing up. Brainspotting finds the visual location with a pointer that attaches, that correlates to that spot in the subconscious when the original thing happened, gathers everything that may be attached to it, and processes it as your body processes it. It's a really interesting thing because everybody has a different experience with it, but it results in the same thing.
Yeah.
You no longer are triggered. You remember the trigger. You remember how it used to feel.
Yes.
But you're not emotionally pushed by it anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
fascinating. Yeah. It's a really phenomenal tool. And like I said, it out of, in the session we did, I mean, I know I've done a lot of other work and I'm sure that contributed toward that being effective, but to be able to, after a decade get on and be like, oh, here I go for a ride. That's great. You're like, whoa, it's pretty, it's no small thing.
No. And the work that you did to preface that I don't work with people who haven't had therapy of some sort. You really do have to have an awareness of your stories, your hurts, your traumas in life, because that's the work that leads up, that makes this so effective, because then we can really focus on the theme, the thing, versus like, I just don't feel good. Well, I can't really work with that because it needs more specificity. And that's the work that you did prior to it.
And as you've kind of, developed into this current iteration of who you are, like, what is the practice that's personally led you to this point? Like, what do you use to support yourself and your development and your inner world?
I love that. I love that so much because, again, trenches about my own work. I am the most important person in my life.
Yeah.
I treat myself as such. I have a family, I have animals, I have friends, I have clients, I have lots and lots of things that I have sacrificed over and over and over for. And I suffered. Mm-hmm. And so that oxygen mask first metaphor that we all like to throw around and is like, we all kind of want to throw up in our mouth a little bit every time we hear it now. I actually live that way. And that's what it is. That is the big difference. That is the thing that I rely on every single day. Am I right with me? Mm-hmm. And then the world comes second. And if I'm not right with me, then the world doesn't even happen.
And I mean, that's a pretty radical thing sometimes to say, because we're taught as women, it's like, put our families first, put our communities first, put work and all the caring and the nurturing. But as we're saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. So when did that switch to, I need to put myself first in order to serve others happen for you?
Okay, so what it really happened was that I understood it intellectually for a long time, for a really long time. And then I couldn't quite figure out how to do that. Like, I went through all the iterations everybody does, right? Anybody who's on a spiritual or personal development path, we try it on. It starts with, okay, well, I can do some self-care. I can do some self-care. I can take a day for myself, and I can read, and I can take a bubble bath, or I can take a little vacation. But those are not quite it. Mm-hmm. It is not abandoning myself when I say I'm going to do something. It's not, so shifting that was when I started to understand that it's not, that self-care it doesn't feel luxurious. It's not rainbows and kittens.
Nope.
It is radical, and it is really freaking hard work to look at my kid in the face and say, I see that you're suffering and I'm having an emotional reaction to it. And I can't work with you right now. I'm going to leave you suffering for a couple of minutes while I go figure out why I'm having an emotional reaction to it. And I clean my shit up before I come back to you. Because if I try to give you something that I don't have, this is going to go sideways. And I've got nothing to give. And so it's really, really hard work because the knee-jerk reaction is to go serve, to go sacrifice, and I can't have a relationship with you that is full of integrity unless I have integrity with the relationship with myself.
Yep.
It's incongruent and it doesn't work. And that's what changed was I tried it. I tried to do the stuff that looked right. And then I wasn't right with me. And my relationships and the outcomes and the connections were still unbalanced. And I still ended up suffering and feeling out of balance. And I was like, oh, there's more to this.
Yeah.
So.
No, I mean, that's the point of having these conversations is to kind of help other women reframe and think of things in a different way. So, putting yourself first, even the definition of self-care, which is counterintuitive, indicative of the way it's promoted in mainstream media, is huge. So thank you so much for sharing that. And, in terms of some of your more spiritual practices, because I'm going to tell you guys, like her work isn't just like transformational in the ways that other coaches use it. A lot of it has to end up being about your soul and your purpose and the things. And that's what I unearthed with you, Kecia. So talk to me about maybe just some of your own spiritual practices or your soul practices. Like, I mean, do you breathe? Do you meditate? Are you a walker? Like, where do you find your equilibrium and start with putting yourself first and fitting into your version of self-care?
That's a really good question. And honestly, I've done them all. I've done all of that.
Yeah.
And I still do all of them. I'm not ritualistic. And the reason, so I am ritualistic. I take the first hour of every morning to myself.
Yeah.
Nobody else. I mean, the animals try to get involved because, you cannot. And so every now and then, but I will try to sneak around my animals to just not wake them up because that's for me. And I do that for me. I don't do it because everybody has to have a morning ritual. The real trick is that you try on all of it, right? Because sometimes I'm in a situation where I have no access to sit and meditate, right? So I need to find my center without being able to meditate. I bring in my breath and I'll bring in breath and I'll bring in mindfulness in that moment. Some things that I am kind of non-negotiable about are gratitude, which took me a really, really long time because I hated the word. The word to me was, it was a should. It was, you have to do this. Like, you should be grateful for this. Quit asking for shit. That's how it was put on.
Right.
You need to be grateful because you have stuff and others don't. And it was always in that kind of that energy. So I don't know if probably throughout this whole conversation, you've heard me probably reference energy. It's all in the body. It's all in the body. How, and so the recognizing, I think really the big job in all of it is recognizing when you are in alignment with yourself and when you're not. Yeah. And that is a feeling. It is not a place that you can, it's not up here. It's in the body. You can't articulate it. You can't talk about it or write about it. There's lots of poems. There's, paintings and that express it, but it is not some place that you can find with your mind. It is in your body, and that takes practice. So the practice is always when I say something, how does that feel? Do I feel good about that? Or when I'm thinking something, because you can feel the discord. You can feel when there's tension in your body. You can feel when there's fear, because fear for me shows up in my stomach more often than not. And a lot of people feel it in their stomach. So I don't know if I answered your question, because part of it is that when something becomes ritual or routine, it loses its power. So I change it up. So the second it starts becoming mundane, I change it up.
I love that. And that was exactly what I was asking. Because even in my own morning practice, which I'm very consistent in, and I'm also not afraid to skip once in a while if it's, like I was saying, Sunday morning and I want my sugary coffee and I want to go hang out with our horses. That's what I do, right? Because even that's a practice in presence. But that's what I've been starting to find and see more. It's like, wake up, same day, 2 hours of meditate, breathe, yoga, get your zen in your center before you can even function in the world. Doesn't quite resonate with most women of color, women in active roles that serve many people. And sometimes I'm long, sometimes I'm short. It is something I'm consistent in, but yeah, one day I want to breathe. Sometimes I want to spend an extra long time sitting in meditation. And there's other days I want to go on, a 5-mile walk and come home and end with a dance party, right? But I was present in all of that and started the day with myself and what my needs were before I moved on to others. But then by doing that, even if it is a little bit of a variable, it then allowed me to show up for what I needed to be present for.
Yeah. And honestly, I think the key in all of that you said was presence.
Yeah.
Because presence is alignment. You can't be worried about the past. You can't be or worried about the future or ruminating about the past. You can't be in your head when you're in the present moment. You can't, if you're present with what you're doing, you are attending and attentive to whatever you're doing in that moment. And that is alignment. Even if it's something you are not happy about. Even if what I'm feeling is loss. Even if what I'm feeling in the moment is pain and agony and dissatisfaction or frustration, being present for all of those is just as important as finding the Zen.
Yeah.
Presence. I think you nailed that when you said that. It's presence is where you find the Zen. And sometimes it's 5 seconds. Sometimes it's an hour and a half.
Yep. And I think that, with that, that it's not, I think it's really important to, let's talk about one of our, something you and I've touched base on a couple times, but it's like, with that being present, right? Well, in that, it's like oftentimes people come to coaches or programs or modalities trying to fix themselves when there really isn't, there's nothing wrong with them in the first place. So let's talk more about that.
So nobody will believe you when you say this. There is nothing wrong with you. There is nothing to apologize for. You are enough. We've all heard it, and none of us believe it. Because we've been trained away. And here, this is something that you and I have talked about before.
Yeah.
As children, we are conditioned and trained and led away from ourselves.
Yeah.
Right? We're led all in the noble idea to teach us about the world around us, right?
Yeah.
To give us the best leg up in the world, all with good intentions. Some are not good intentioned. Some are not well intentioned, and they are very damaged people that are putting it on you, and everything in between. But we are led away from ourselves, and then we spend the rest of our lives trying to come back home. And Ram Dass said it, that we're just all here walking each other home, and that's very true. That's what we're here to do, is to come back home to us, to the seat of our soul, to the part of us that is connected to something far greater than us, far more intelligent, far more immense and impressive. And yet it is us when we've come back home. Yep. It's only separate from us when we're on the trail home, when we've gone to the far reaches, and then we have to go, what is it that we're all trying to fill that hole. Right? Like everything that we do is to fill the hole of unworthiness, of unlovability, of disconnection, of whatever the core is that feels like that hole. Everything that we do is an attempt to fill that. But what is the filler is the relationship with yourself, because you're born on your own, you die on your own in this human package. And what connects us all is the thing that's greater, whatever that is. So I probably got sidetracked, because I do.
No, that's exactly where I wanted it to meander.
Yeah. Well, I tend to meander almost always there, because it really, in the metaphysical, quantum physics, spiritual woo-woo it all kind of points to the fact that we are all the same, literally the same soup.
Yeah.
And what differentiates us is this really thin little veil of consciousness that says, I am different than you and I am separate from you. But if we remove that, we're all the same soup. We're all the same ingredients. We're all the same ingredients as stardust and the earth below our feet. It is the same chemical makeup as everybody else and everything else. And that is beautiful. And our egos, our thinking minds, are the thing that likes to keep us separate. And it keeps us separate because it thinks it's keeping us safe. And it was designed to keep the human packaging safe because that's important. We don't get to have the experience if the package dies, right? So anyway, again, off track, but it's connection to yourself is the pathway to everything.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing. Is there anything you'd like to share that I haven't asked you yet?
Yes, probably just this.
Please.
If I could ask everybody to do just one thing, it is to refrain from judgment. Judgment, because when we judge something, we fix it in place and we cannot change. And I think that the massive amounts of divisiveness that we're feeling in our world, the root of that is judgment. It's thinking we know something, and when we think we know something empirically, regardless of whether there's evidence or not, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter if all your evidence supports it. It cannot change, and change is the only constant in this physical reality.
Yeah. So Kecia, to kind of, in closing, where can everyone find you?
Coachingwithkecia.com.
I love it. Perfect. And I have 2 rapid fire questions for you. Yes. So the first is, what is one book that you think any woman should read and or listen to?
Oh my God, books. I have
one. Only one.
I only get one.
And it's been so hard for everybody else. Only one.
Interestingly enough, it's The Anatomy of Peace. Okay. And it is by the Arbinger Institute, The Anatomy of Peace. And because it speaks so clearly to what is going on in our world today, that we can't hate until we make something, until we dissociate with it. When we make something other, that's how we can hate. Yeah. So bring it in close and don't make it other. Anyway, that's a fantastic book.
Okay. And what is one thing, only one, that every woman should stop doing now?
Criticizing themselves and others.
I love it. Perfect. Well, everyone, I will leave a link to Kecia's website as well as her book recommendations and a few other things she mentioned in the show notes. And we will see you next time. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for listening to this episode of Practice Dirty. Please support this podcast by subscribing on iTunes or Spotify and leaving us a rating. If you're looking for the best self-guided mindfulness and discovery tools available for women over the age of 40, head over to mikaelarose.com. I'll see you next time.